What's up, friends? Welcome to Web3 Academy, a place for entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers to explore and learn how to use Web3 to transform business models and create thriving communities. Enjoy this next episode.
GM, welcome to Web3 Academy. It is the weekly Doer Spotlight, where we highlight somebody doing things in the Web3 world. I am one of your co-hosts, Jay Hamilton, here with you. Kyle is here as always as well. What's up, Kai?
What's up, friends? Happy to be here. Looking forward to talking with our guest today. I'll let you say who it is.
Don't interrupt my my introduction. Give me a sec here. So today with us, we have Jason Keath. Jason is the co-founder of Social Fresh. Social Fresh is the original social media conference and also a consultancy, and they produce research as well. Jason's also an artist, an NFT artist, a writer, brand strategist, and really an all things social and Web3 expert. I know he's also part of the Jump community, which I'm in there with him as well. And they've got Social Fresh. The conference is coming back this year in person, which is very exciting. I think that's in less than a month. So Jason, thanks so much for giving us the time as you lead up to this big conference, which I know I was looking at some of the speakers. You got Lyft, Twitter, Square, Shopify, Audi, just an incredible guest list. And just before you jump in here, Jason, he also recently in his spare time, I don't know how you have the time, Jason, launched Remint DAO, which we're really excited to chat about that as well. Really cool project. And I think I might have to join in on that one by the end of this, I'm sure. Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle and Jay. Excited to talk about all things Web3 and social. And just in general, I don't know how I find time to do things easier, but it's helpful in Web3 when things are decentralized. Things can still happen when you're off the clock. So
there you go. And also there seems to be a more of an acceptance of working on multiple projects. And I don't know if that's acceptance makes it a good thing, because then we're all just getting more busy, but let's take on more. Why don't we? So Jason, start us off with your Web3 origin story. Like, how did you first get hooked? What, was there a moment? Did somebody tell you about it? Did you read some article? What was sort of the first step, I guess, before you even went down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, I mean, I've been light into crypto for, the better part of a decade. Really not heavy into the space. But, I get paid to let people know what's coming next. So I research, I read, talk to smart people on a regular basis. So, I've been paying attention to Web3 for a while, probably more seriously the last 3 years. And then I'd say in the last 2 years is when we started seeing kind of interest from our existing legacy companies, customers. So people that attend Social Fresh, people that hire Social Fresh for brand strategy and social strategy support. When we were surveying those audiences, when we were talking to those people, there was more and more interest into, DeFi, NFTs, and in general, just Web3 blockchain technologies. I think when NFTs started to hit the radar more in 2021, we saw that ramp up to where more people were interested in that than they were in, Clubhouse as a topic for training, for instance, at one point. So we knew we needed to start taking it more seriously. We started getting contacted for work on the social side of Web3 and on the brand strategy side of Web3 from potential clients. And just, I'd say slowly over the last 2 years, almost all of our new business on the consultancy side has switched over to Web3 work, whether that's Web2 companies coming into Web3 or Web3 brands needing more traditional strategy support. And, I got to the point at one point, we knew we needed to just dive deeper, and we did a conference called NFT Fresh. That was in 2021. And we really were trying to figure out where we could most help brands, what we didn't know about the space. And that was a huge success. It was virtual conference, but we had Cool Cats there, we had Pussy Riot, we had a lot of Web3 brands attend. And just a great discussion all across the industry, not just NFTs. We talked about DAOs, we talked about DeFi, and from there we've really zeroed in on NFT projects and kind of Web3 community projects and broad strategy. And since then we've, I'd say 50% of my time is Web3 work and 50% is still the legacy business of Social Fresh, but that's starting to transition. I'd say the majority, after our conference next month, the majority of my work will definitely be in Web3.
When you had all these questions kind of asking about how to use NFTs, or by then at that point, it probably wasn't really Web3. I think that kind of just came around over the last year. But what were the things that these brands or these companies were asking? Like, they were looking for help. Is it that they wanted to launch an NFT? Is it that they were just trying to figure out how to use this space? Or like, what sort of themes were you seeing with these questions?
I think early on, back almost 2 years now, it's just more about understanding the space and the potential of the space. Like, how is this going to impact our business? Will it impact our business? How soon? Do brands need to start, hiring people in this space, start building strategy in this space? And then coming up to today, we've transitioned. I think most brands have looked at NFTs, kind of launching some type of NFT project as a way to get their foot in the door. And then more recently, maybe like a metaverse play, which we advise against. I don't think that's the right play for most brands, but that's interesting. I think that's interesting to a lot of brands because there's a little bit of backlash with NFT plays from brands, and there's less so in metaverse campaigns. And I'd say that now we're starting to see a lot more brands be open to not just launching an NFT, but launching some type of Web3 community, Discord, tokens, hiring community managers, hiring strategy for that longer term kind of customer community space.
So that's really interesting. I want to dive super deep into, the Web3 stuff and, NFTs and all that you're talking about with brands. But first, why do you say no to metaverse? What's the reason of why you're kind of saying hold off right now?
People don't spend time in the metaverse. Like, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the actual metrics that brands are traditionally going after, which is brands want exposure, they want awareness, they want to build deeper connections with customers and potential customers. And right now, the metaverse, there's some gaming spaces that people do spend a little bit of time on. The whole VR play, no one spends time in VR. Like, they put a headset on for a half hour, maybe an hour at most, and they do that like at max once a week. I mean, there's a few exceptions to that, but the average person, I think the average person that owns VR goggles uses them once or twice a month. So it's not a place where you're actually getting good quality of return for your investment, for your marketing dollars. That may change over time, but I think that's like 3 to 10 years that changes. I don't think it's next year. There are other kind of desktop metaverse plays right now, but the experiences that are happening there are just not super engaging, in my opinion. And most brand metaverse campaigns are, hey, come walk around this space I built for 5 minutes, and that's it. Right. Or, hey, put this outfit on that we designed, and then they never do it again, right? So, like, I mean, I think there are some opportunities to experiment. I just, really what they're after right now are just some type of PR splash. We're the first to do this metaverse thing, right? And that's fine. PR is important. Being innovative and having those stories is important. I just am very clear with people, if you're really investing in Web3, a metaverse campaign, short-term campaign is not really a long-term investment. If you're looking to experiment in a lot of different ways, that's totally fine. We can help brands do that. We've got lots of interesting ideas that are more interesting than what's out there right now that we're working with people on. But in general, I think it's not the right kind of first mover opportunity for most brands.
And I assume that by desktop versions, you're talking about like Decentraland and crypto voxels and all those kind of things. I'm in the same mindset as, like, there's not a lot of people in there. The experience is just not great yet. It has some promise eventually, but it's definitely not there. The only thing that I saw that was kind of cool was last year when I think it was in Decentraland, they had I think Kraken put it on, but it was like a festival, and they had like Paris Hilton and a few others that were doing a concert there. And that was actually kind of cool. There was a decent amount of people that went in, and there was some brands that had like avatar clothings and things. And I was like, oh, this is like kind of cool. Like I sort of saw where it's going, but I was like, wow, this is way too far out for that to make any sense.
Yeah, the technology is just not there yet. I mean, it's getting there slowly, but that's been, you can say that for the last 20 years. So it's it's not dissimilar from what existed 20 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of great advances, but I see the vision too. I think long term I'm bullish, but today a brand talks to us and I'm very honest that I don't think that's the right place to put your major bet in the space.
Right. And many people, sorry, Jay, I'll let you go right after this one, but many people would say that Web3 in general is just not ready yet for mainstream, right? Like the tech is just not quite there, even like NFTs and things like that. So with that in mind, like, where do you see the kind of first stages, or like, where are you guiding brands and companies to kind of dive into the space? Is it like a lot of people I think see right now as well, we can launch an NFT and you can make some revenue. But where are you seeing sort of the bigger long-term play from this? Like, why should brands be already experimenting with NFTs, even though like there's not a lot of people that own NFTs? I think there's, last I saw was like a few million, so it's still pretty small. So where do you see is the benefit there?
Yeah, I mean, today, I think NFTs are the entry point for brands in multiple ways. Collaborations with artists, launching their own collection, launching their own member token community of some sort. And I think one of the things is, I mean, some industries, some brands are ready to go today. If you have IP, if you're a media brand, it makes a lot more sense for you to be there today. If you're in music, if you're in entertainment, sports, etc., any type of media connection. Time Magazine is out there doing stuff. Any of these sports fashion brands, Nike, Adidas, they're out there doing things. Playboy is out there. I think all of those make a lot of sense. Anybody else, you're really in just kind of a innovation R&D phase. You're learning. So launching some type of community, launching some type of NFT collection is great. You don't need to do much with it. It doesn't need to be fancy. A lot of the art has been, some of it's terrible, some of it's okay. And that's fine, honestly, because it's, people are going to be interested because of the brand. And if there's utility attached to it, or just some type of, this is the first time Pepsi launched an NFT, like there's reasons to be interested there just for that. And there's plenty to learn just on those kind of basic, launches, more or less. I think if your company considers itself an innovative company, those are the companies we're talking to, both Web3 native brands and Web2 kind of innovative companies that are coming into Web3. Those are the brands that really are investing longer term and have a longer term strategy. They want to hire Web3 people. They want to hire community managers. They want to, building, even if they're experimenting, they want to build in steps with strategy and know what they're learning along the way. So it just depends on what type of brand you are and how you consider yourself in that kind of puzzle I described. I think every major brand should be looking at it. They should have people with dedicated time to invest in it, to research, to learn at a minimum.
So I want to keep pulling on that thread of what should brands be doing and what your advice would be to them. But before we do, one thing that we always try to focus on is the why Web3, right? Because I think there's a lot of negative feelings particularly towards NFTs, as you identified. And when there's a new technology that comes out, a lot of people wonder, like, is this a good thing? Like, why do we need this, right? And so I'm curious to hear, when Social Fresh started to get more and more Web3 opportunities, and you started to get involved in Web3, why spend your time there? I've heard you say that Web3 can be an incredible force for good, which we also really believe. This is so much more than just speculation and dollar go up. But curious to hear your why and what you believe we're really building here, and why it's important for the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I relate it back to social media. So when social media started going mainstream in 2007, 8, 9, it felt the same to me. A lot of people have shared this impression. It felt the same to me as what you see with Web3 now, which is It's this underlying fundamental technology that is taking over the web. It's not taking over everything, but it's a significant enough new layer to the internet that it allows for more of a global connection. It allows for more transparency. It allows for more just kind of purpose-based organizations and people to do cool things, to build cool projects. I think that's true when social launched. I think Web3 is taking that up a level because of the ownership layer. Web3 specifically builds on that by allowing for that ownership layer. So, giving creators more power, taking away power from centralized organizations and gatekeepers, and the decentralization takes that global connection point and really amplifies it. So for instance, like in Jump DAO, which is a DAO that Jay mentioned that we're both in, I've worked with artists and community managers from Asia, from Latin America, from Colombia. A couple of our more active members are in Colombia, and they're building stuff in these countries and working for DAOs where the amount of money they can make is 10x what you could make in those countries natively, but you can work from Web3 anywhere in the world. And many DAOs and many of these organizations do have global members and global kind of workers. And I just am, I'm blown away by that. I've worked with some people in Africa that have been building NFT collections, in Cuba, where the kind of access to capital that they can get in Web3 just hasn't existed before in any level. So there's a lot of, Web3 is not perfect. There's tons of negatives too, and we're going to see more and more of those. Just like you didn't see the negatives of social media immediately, that's going to happen. But I also think Web3 has the potential infrastructure to fix the problems that will arise from Web3 more so than social does, because it's decentralized. So people can literally wake up and decide they want to fix something and have an impact pretty quickly. I can't wake up tomorrow and change Twitter's algorithm or Facebook's feed, right? And how things are filtered there. But I could launch, an OpenSea competitor tomorrow. Like there's open source ways to do that. There's people interested in that. There's tons of open data. And the ethos is there to work on those types of problems. So I think, it just levels up the potential to contribute, social good into the world.
I love that. It's actually the same thing that, I love Web3 for, is just the openness, the potential, the opportunity that comes from it for anyone in the world, right? And so to me, that's super exciting. However, for big brands, like let's say a Meta, for example, who, Instagram has just announced they are, building on top of Web3 and launching NFTs, which is super exciting. How do you think they're thinking through this? Like, the nice thing I saw with Instagram is like, they're not building their own blockchain and like creating their own NFTs. They're going to plug into the open blockchains that we use, right? Which is great. But like you said, is like, if you don't agree with something, you can't just change Twitter, but in this world you can, which probably isn't the most ideal scenario for companies like Google and Facebook, et cetera. So I don't know if you're having any conversations with companies of that nature, but what are just your thoughts on what they're thinking, or where they might take this and how they might integrate in with all of this?
Yeah, I think the smart people in that space are aware that they are likely going to be disrupted if they don't disrupt themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think Zuckerberg is thinking that at Meta. I think Messeri is thinking that at Instagram. The tech people and finance people that I've talked to are thinking through those steps. And I think you're much more likely to see the merging of those worlds than you are to see kind of the demise of Web2 companies. Mm-hmm. Like the power that Facebook has, the power that Instagram has, the power that a lot of these tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, have, is really hard to put a realistic picture to. It's hard to paint that picture for people. So if you look at, there's 4,000 developers working on the Ethereum blockchain.
It's so small.
Right?
It's nothing.
It's big in some ways, but it's small. You look at, Facebook has literally 10,000 developers just working on VR. just VR today.
Right.
You know, and they're working full time, where like Ethereum developers are, you know, they're Web3 workers. So are they full time? Some of them probably. Most of them, I think, are probably working on multiple projects. And that's not a knock on Ethereum, but just to put in perspective the power of these platforms when they decide to pivot, like Facebook is spending more money, more man hours, more human hours than anyone on the metaverse right now, like, and probably by multiples. So I think what's gonna happen is these companies are gonna be forced to blow up their own worlds a little bit in order to stop the kind of intruder from coming outside the house. I think they have to make these changes. And I mean, I'm encouraged by some small things. I agree that Instagram building on existing blockchains. I think they're, you know, the founders of Polygon were on Bankless last week talking about how they see Facebook basically launching their own layer 3 chain, whether it's on Polygon or somewhere else. It's just dedicated to them, because there's literally not a chain today. Like if everybody on Instagram started using Polygon, it's not big enough. It wouldn't, nothing is big enough today to take that kind of traffic and activity. So I think those are the types of merging that I'm talking about, like Facebook working with Polygon and starting something new together. I think that's the most likely outcome, but it's going to be influenced by Web3 kind of belief systems, which I think is important. Even if you look at like the little detail of Instagram launching NFTs, the little verified badge is a hexagon. It's a rounded hexagon or rexagon, which is the exact shape that Twitter uses for NFT avatars, right? And that's, there's no accident, like that's matched exactly. And it's an interoperable, it's a small interoperable symbol, just like, you know, a hashtag started on Twitter and now all social platforms use it. So does that mean that Facebook's metaverse is going to be open and kind of interoperable? We still don't know yet, but I think we'll start to see small signs like that are positive. And if they do it poorly, somebody will come along and they will disrupt them. So I think most of these companies are not going to be disrupted in the way that we would hope or we think that might happen, but there will be a couple of situations where that does happen.
Yeah, we'll see if they play nice. I mean, one example was Robinhood over the last weekend at Permissionless Conference announced that they're launching a Web3 wallet, basically like a non-custodial wallet. So they're basically disrupting their own current business, which is a custodial exchange. So that's really interesting. I think that's hopefully the way that most of these tech and I want to say banking infrastructure and companies go. I don't think the banking system is going to do that. We'll see. I think they're too far gone. But so
I wouldn't put it past the banking. I mean, we work with a lot of finance and a lot of fintech, and I think one or two of them will make that leap. I think they will make the same kind of Robinhood disruption. Yeah. Right. Because remember, there's too much competition in that space already right now. Like it's fintech and traditional banking is just hugely competitive. So I mean, someone could easily make that leap and not have much to lose.
And it seems obvious, but I don't know. We'll see who does it, but it seems obvious to me anyway. But speaking of that, can you sort of make the business case for something like Instagram, like Meta, and any of these big tech companies? Like, why should they plug into these existing blockchains rather than like you said, they have more developers in the entire space, all working just on VR? Why don't they just build their own thing, right? Like, why do they need to plug into this? And is it just because, like you said, they're going to be disrupted, so they kind of have to? Or is it because what we're building actually will be better, like they'll be better off by plugging into it because they'll be able to, I don't know, reach their customers better or provide better experiences? Or like, what is the business case here for them?
Well, I mean, we're headed for a multi-chain world. I think we're already in a multi-chain world, even if it's all EVM. The business case is that you open up a network effect, like plugging into Ethereum, plugging into Solana, plugging into Polygon. Those are early, small communities, but not insignificant numbers. And the amount of capital that's moving through these networks is really significant. So I think if you want to be in Web3 and you want to attract the native Web3 users today, you have to connect to those networks because building your own blockchain and hoping to bring in the Web3 community is a huge challenge. And the longer you wait, the bigger the challenge that will. The bigger EVM gets, the bigger Ethereum, Polygon, Solana get. It's going to be a struggle. So unless you are pursuing a blockchain as a business model purely, if you're starting the next Solana, if you have, some type of technology play that makes a better blockchain, that's one thing. But I think that's a whole different conversation. I do think you will see, and especially after hearing Polygon's co-founders talk about this, they're literally launching or have launched a blockchain as a service even if they're not doing it, they're connecting brands to the vendors that will do it for them on Polygon. And you're outsourcing the security, you're outsourcing the technical build, the upkeep. And I think that's going to be the future for a lot of businesses. You think of somebody like Stripe or Instagram or Amazon. They may interact with Ethereum and Solana and Polygon, but they also might need their own chain for like backend transactions or confirmations or rolling up some of these models just to increase speed and volume enough to be able to handle the scale of these businesses. So I think we'll see a lot of kind of infrastructure, customized infrastructure that's still transparent, still interoperable, but custom to some of these unique platform situations.
I agree actually completely. I think a lot of these companies are going to build their own rollups on top of, whatever Ethereum or Polygon or wherever they decide to do these rollups, because it's not easy to build a blockchain that is sustainable, right? This is why the researchers of Ethereum and of Bitcoin and all these other blockchains, like, it's very, very hard. So it makes no sense to kind of go and try to compete with that. One of the interesting things I saw recently was OpenSea. I don't know if you saw is launching, or maybe did launch already. I think it's called Seaport, which is basically turning their marketplace, well, not their marketplace, but creating a new one that is a marketplace that is like a protocol. It is not it's no longer like a centralized product. It is now like a decentralized protocol that people can build on top of, et cetera. Do you think that these bigger tech companies will start to do things like that, or will they just build their centralized companies and plug into Web3?
Yeah, I think it's very clever because we're already in kind of a decentralized, Looks Rare did an outside attack on OpenSea and because all that data is out there and it's free to access. So I think, what OpenSea is doing with this protocol is interesting. It's basically saying, hey, here's a protocol everyone can use, and it benefits you because you can, see what we've built and use some of the innovations we've made. But it also is OpenSea because anybody that uses that protocol automatically, is interoperable with OpenSea. So they're essentially saying we have a first mover advantage. We feel like our product is high enough quality that we can protect that as long as we're interoperable with everyone else. So if you have a choice of 10 marketplaces and they're all pretty much on the same protocol, OpenSea feels like they can be the best solution. So it's an interesting direction. At the same time, the rumor is that OpenSea is going to go the public route and become a public company. I don't know how that jives necessarily. I mean, I think they could do both clearly, but it's, when you become a public company, then your interests change slightly, right? You have a different investor type that you have to please with public investors. So I think it's a smart move. I would love to see that happen with Facebook. I've seen pluses and negatives in what Facebook has done so far in the very early days of what they're building. I think no matter what happens, like Facebook is trying to get out of the ad industry, or at least trying to diversify their revenue away from ad dollars exclusively. And with a metaverse, what's the way they're doing that? They're basically becoming a fintech. They're going to take a cut just like OpenSea does. OpenSea is a fintech company, right? They are a processor. They take a cut of transactions. And I think that's what Facebook is going to do. And if they really want to make the most money, they will make an interoperable world when anybody can come in and build their own metaverse and they take a cut of the transactions. The problem is they have to take a very small cut for that to be interesting to the most people. So if they go big and let everybody be interoperable and really do like Web3 properly and decentralized, that could be a great business model. And it would be kind of a protocol, would be a metaverse protocol. So if I was them, that's what I would be doing. And there's hints of that in what Zuckerberg talks about, but there's other things, they came out with, like, if you're building NFTs, for their metaverse, they're going to take like 51% or whatever that story was. And I thought that would quickly become something that they would say, no, we're not going to take that much. That was a typo or a mistake or something. And I never saw a retraction for that.
No.
So that confuses me because that doesn't sound like what I think they should be building. But who knows? I don't know what they're thinking on the back of their napkin, but that's kind of how I see what it would be like if I was advising them.
I would assume that they are smarter than to do that, but I guess you don't really know. Like if they did do that, here's the thing. I feel like they could launch a metaverse and charge this 50%. And I bet you it works short term because they're going to build a way better experience in UX than anyone else, especially those in Web3 are doing. So like, I bet you it works, but it definitely doesn't work long-term because eventually when the protocols actually build something of good UX, like where it's much, much, much cheaper and interoperable, then everyone's going to go there eventually, but we'll see how that plays out.
It'll be interesting. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it should be fun to watch.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the projects you are involved with, Jason. And where I kind of want to go is a lot of our listeners are interested in getting involved in Web3 projects, whether they're trying to get a job in the space or they're interested in joining a DAO. And I'd sort of like to hear first. Let's hear about your projects, but then let's talk about how you think people can pick projects, what they should be looking out for, sort of this sustainability versus speculation that we see a lot of happening in the space. But first, tell us a little bit about the projects that you're involved with. Let's start with that.
Yeah, the two main, so I am an artist and I do NFT art. So I've done NFT art for a couple of our clients and I'm working my own NFT art. So that's something that I'm always working on in the background. I'm very passionate about, and I finally have an excuse to use my art degree again, which has been nice. And it's my favorite kind of work. But the two pure kind of Web3 projects that I'm working on outside of Jump DAO, which I'm in the leadership of, is Social Fresh DAO and Remit DAO. So Social Fresh DAO is basically us taking our Web2 legacy company, Social Fresh, and the audience it serves is social media managers, community managers, essentially the professionals that run social and community accounts, and trying to build almost a pseudo online union for those people based on Web3 belief systems. So it's decentralized. We have a token, the SoFresh token. We want to work on big projects like mental health research. Social media community managers have some of the most stressful jobs. It's literally like right behind firefighters, which is, which doesn't make any sense. We're not saving lives in social media, but it's just always on, low pay, low respect gigs, and always getting kind of trounced with troll comments and terrible DMs, et cetera, right? So, working on some of these things to improve the industry like a union would, to create expectations for hiring, for job descriptions, for compensation, and then diving deep into that mental health side. So for instance, it's very early, we're building kind of the foundation of it, but an example project that we're working on is to do an early test of how much can teletherapy help people's kind of anxiety, stress, depression that are in this space. So we're going to do like a 15 to 30 person test that we're looking for some partners on to underwrite of, research and survey people anonymously before they do the therapy, do 3 months of teletherapy, research after, and see like what is the actual effect. Is this something that's a sustainable solution to help people in this industry? And yeah, it's, if you work in social, if you work in community, we're trying to onboard that space into Web3. I think there's going to be a lot of jobs in that space. If you look at Web3 job boards, it's literally like developers are number one, community managers are number two. Those are the things that people need the most. And I think a lot of social community professionals will have higher paying gigs in this space. So that's also kind of a piece of what we're building there. So yeah, if you work in social community, check out Social Fresh DAO. Check out our Twitter account. There's like an application right now, but eventually there'll be completely open Discord as we continue to build out the framework.
We'll put the links to that in the show notes, so you can just scroll down and you'll be able to find it there. I'm curious. I mean, first, it sounds amazing. why why a DAO instead of like the typical LLC? Like what's the benefit or the reason that you would go the DAO route instead of the old school route?
Yeah, I mean, well, we already have the LLC, and it's, literally our conference and our consultancy, and that's going to stay where it is. I mean, ultimately, maybe there's collaboration there, but we wanted to do a DAO, number one, because we wanted it to be a scalable version of working on the projects we've always wanted to work on as a small company, but never had the bandwidth to do. So I've wanted to do like these mental health research reports for almost a decade now, and I just, to do it correctly and do it the way I want to, it's not revenue producing. It's just kind of a pure social good, and our business is small enough that I can't commit hours to things that are just not going to improve the business. So that's a piece of it. And to do some of these projects correctly, you really need a large community scale to support them. And that's what a DAO does. It's intrinsically self-motivated through ownership layers, through shared vision. And because I want social media and community professionals to be able to come in and build a DAO and have that Web3 experience. I think that's going to be a huge education for the people that are already signed up. And I mean, we're already, just a decentralization piece is allows you to take ideas from so many people in a quick way. So like, when I started this, I mean, we've been working on it for a few months, just slowly once we get past the conference, we'll work on it a little more, but we've already got a podcast, like the first episode of a podcast we're launching on Web3 and social. I didn't come up with that. That wasn't in my original roadmap. That was people that came in and on day one wanted to do that together. The job board that we've already launched for Web3 social jobs is something that one of our kind of more active early members wanted to work on, and I think has come out really well and has already helped people find jobs in the space. So like that, those are examples of what a DAO can do that an LLC really can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is super interesting to bring just so many people together, and then these experts in all these different areas, and everyone just kind of runs with it, which is really cool. One of the things that I always try to wrap my head around when I'm in a DAO or learning about DAOs is, like you said, the things you wanted to do in the DAO are not necessarily revenue generating, but the kind of cool thing is DAOs seem to have different incentive mechanisms. How does this DAO incentivize people? Like, I know you have a token, so I guess that's probably where the incentives come from. But like, is there utility to that token, or is the plan to, and maybe the job board is one of the ways, like, to generate revenue so that this token can hold value? Or like, how do you see this DAO like actually making sense long-term, rather than just a bunch of people kind of starting out, getting some things rolling, and then it sort of fades?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to build a DAO. You can do investment DAOs where there's intrinsically just a financial interest. You can do larger social DAOs like Friends with Benefits, where there's a pretty significant financial layer. I think, what we've chosen to do is, every DAO does need a revenue model, and we have revenue plans. The job board is part of that. But I think the larger piece of it is just building something where the community is involved because it helps the community. That's not a Web3 thing. That's just great communities exist that way. And that in and of itself will give the DAO, Social Fresh DAO, enough kind of power, authority, influence that it can make some significant revenue gains by using that force. So if if we institute, for instance, I've never talked about this, it's just an idea that enters my head right now, but if we wanted to, we could create kind of standards in the industry. So if you're hiring a community manager, hiring a social media manager, the standards for Social Fresh DAO members are that you do job descriptions a certain way, that compensation is thought of a certain way, that whatever XYZ. And companies can start to get flagged when they're not doing that. Hey, this job description doesn't really assign to this set of rules that we think you should look at. And companies will start to pay attention to that. Maybe they pay the DAO to consult on helping them hire, on helping them create the right job descriptions, on helping them improve their process. That's an example of how the community itself can become a revenue generating force just because of its influence. And I think there's other products. There's a lot of different products we've talked about, and it's very early. I want the community to kind of determine that on its own. But yeah, it also, when you're there because the community is helping the community members, there's less of a requirement that it be revenue producing. But I think any DAO, any ownership layer based organization should have a revenue plan and be looking at that direction.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think DAOs, so many of the struggles that we've heard with DAOs is, the coordination, right? And the ability to achieve traction when you have so many people working an undetermined amount of time on something. How have you sort of battled those challenges of traction, accountability, coordination across multiple people? Is it the size of the DAOs that you're involved in that allows that because they're just smaller, and so smaller teams are just easier to manage? Or is there other sort of tactics that you guys have used?
I mean, it is chaos to a certain extent, controlled chaos for sure. I think the DAOs that do a best job have very clearly defined structures and plug and play opportunities for people to jump in. So making, repeatable task in the DAO, something that people can learn how to do, can understand are opportunities that they can join and volunteer for, things like that. Having training for those specific roles, having clear, easier onboarding solutions so people know what the DAO does, where it needs help, etc. Cultivating the right culture inside of a DAO, I think, is very important. That's a direct reflection of the founders, leaders, kind of loudest voices in the DAO, for better or worse. And I think in general, having a ownership layer early that gives people a sense of value. It doesn't necessarily have to be my NFT for this DAO is worth $10,000, but it's worth something. I earned it, or I bought it, and I know I could sell it, or it's one of the first NFTs I got because this was one of the first DAOs I participated in. Like, having those ownership layer pieces are pretty important. Even just, I designed the newsletter for the DAO and I got 100 tokens for it. Those things are significant experiences, even if that token is not liquid and it's not technically worth anything today. Just receiving that, especially if you're new to the Web3 space, is a significant experience and a significant a new way to think about participating in an organization. I think those can help people have that intrinsic motivation.
Do you find that brands you're speaking to are thinking about launching DAOs? Like you said, you're like, we have our LLC, Social Fresh, and it's doing its thing, but we don't have the bandwidth, right? The scale to do the other things we want. Is this a common thread at all, or a common theme you're seeing with other brands, or is it more sticking to NFTs and kind of that route for now?
I think the ones that are innovative brands are thinking about it. I've definitely talked to multiple brands about it. Some of them, they know it's not a fit. Some are more kind of innovative technology companies that are looking at it, looking at ways to test it, experiment with it. But yeah, I think most brands are hesitant to go fully into kind of a DAO direction.
Right. So when you speak to a brand, I'm sure it's all one-off and very customizable because it depends on the brand and what they're doing. But do you have some sort of loose framework, I don't know, start with just building a community inside of a Discord, and then it's launch a PO app or something just to get people so they have wallets and can interact with NFTs, and then something from there? Is there a bit of a framework you take people or brands and companies through, or what are your, how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly some of the boring stuff that comes first. There's some research into their audience, some conversations around, if you launch an NFT and there's backlash because people see NFTs as bad for the environment, are you prepared for that conversation, for that backlash? Can you ignore it? Has your organization established, environmentally sound kind of policies internally when it comes to other technology that you can apply to the space? Do you have a lot of developers that work for your company? Do you have a connection to the gaming industry? Because those are the two audiences that are going to be most opinionated about NFTs being involved in a brand. So some of those conversations are the most important to have early. And then if they're truly committed to, the R&D level of innovation, testing, learning, then it's, what is the best kind of section of their audience, community, customer base, or employee base that we can experiment with, talk to, and figure out some clear kind of KPIs that will help them learn and help them understand how these technologies can impact their business and help maybe their marketing, their loyalty, some existing, some existing channel of or metrics that they're already working on that it could potentially plug into.
I always love to ask this question on podcasts, and some people are really good at this, some not so much. I like to look into the future and try to pick people's brains and see where do they see this whole space going? And I know that is impossible to predict, but I'm just curious, when you think about, I don't know, 3, 5, whatever time frame is what you think about, but where do you see this all going in terms of how businesses interact with this stuff and interact with their customers? And is there a place that you see this going and you can see it clearly? Or is it I have no idea, we're just let's figure out how to get this technology right first and go from there? Anything that comes to mind when I ask that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things, we have a lot of these conversations in Jump on a regular basis, but I think any large brand, especially if they're a luxury brand, especially if they're a technology brand, will be accepting crypto as payment in the next couple of years. We're seeing that shift happen on a regular basis right now. I think you'll start to see more employees paid in crypto. That's a little bit harder, but Stripe, I think, will become important to that piece of it, or some similar existing Web2 brand that'll allow that to be an easier plug and play. I think every brand should be looking at, where the blockchain is going to disrupt them, where someone can come in and do what they're doing better because of the blockchain, and they should be experimenting with that now. I think where social media took us is going to be pretty similar in an adoption curve for Web3. So social, we're about almost 15 years into the adoption curve, maybe a little more. And it probably took 7-8 years for it to really start to be a significant mainstream technology. And today, let's call it 15 years in, it's the most common, it's the thing that we spend the most time on the web, right? Social media, social networks are where we spend a lot of time, are where our friendships exist online. Our work environment is increasingly in social platforms online. I think that's where Web3 goes. I think we're technically probably 2 or 3 years into a proper Web3, even though crypto and blockchain is much older. And I think, we're probably 5 to 10 years away from kind of full mainstream adoption. Mm-hmm. But I think you're going to see very influential pockets of consumers adopting these technologies pretty quickly over the next few years. And I think that is going to create a lot of, for me, Web3 doesn't exist without a social layer. And I talk about Web3 and social almost hand in hand. It's very connected. NFTs are essentially a social layer within Web3. Any token is, blockchains are essentially a social layer. Even more than that, they're technology and humans interacting on a regular basis. And I think the automation of that, the decentralization of that is going to change things in significant ways. I think the banking industry is going to be completely disrupted. I think social media is going to be very disrupted. And I think it's going to create a lot of challenges, especially in politics. I mean, political DAOs, we've seen one significant political DAO launch already with Andrew Yang. I think we'll see a lot more over the next couple of years leading into 2 big election seasons in the US. I think there'll be a lot of negatives amongst that, but I think there'll be a lot of positive shifts as well, where people can actually do things like what the Constitution DAO did, but for less maybe frivolous, kind of with more purpose and more real world effect, hopefully.
Other than just buying the Constitution because why not?
I mean, that's cool and it's fun, but it doesn't really change anybody's life, right? And I think we can do big experiments like that with some larger. There's a cool DAO that's doing some significant work on buying up enough of the rainforest in South America and Brazil to have a large impact on the rainforest, not completely disappearing from the world. So things like that, I'm fascinated by.
Very cool. Very cool. I want to pull on one thread there. Was the social media disruption. Would love to get your take on how do you think Web3 will disrupt social media? We're chatting with Lens Protocol right now, and having them come on the podcast, and we'll be chatting more and more about that in the next couple of weeks. We're also having Disco.xyz come on the podcast to talk about digital identity. So much happening in that space, but just would be curious to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, I see the decentralization of social is inevitable, really, and whether that's Facebook and Twitter opening up, some major existing social platform is going to open up and be owned by the users, and if they don't, a new social platform is going to come along that is owned by the users. I think this storyline of Elon trying to buy Twitter and whether that happens or not, one of the things that's exposed is that Twitter and some social networks are a tough business. Like Twitter doesn't make enough money really for anybody to spend a ton of money on them as an ad business. Like Facebook is scaled enough to where they've made that work, but for a lot of them, it's not really a great business model. So it makes a lot more sense for those platforms as a public good to be owned by the users and to have impact by those users. I think we spoke about this previously, but there's hard decisions that get made on these platforms, and I think they become more interesting and more customized when this platform is decentralized, and you or I and other people can make decisions about what they see in their feed, what type of content gets sent to them and shared with them on a regular basis, how that makes them feel on a regular basis, who can contact them, who can respond to them. Like some of those features have improved over the last 5 years on these platforms, but there's a lot further it could go. And I think if one of these companies doesn't do it themselves, one of the 30 different decentralized Web3 social platforms that are being built right now will.
Well, even Coinbase is heading that way, right? Like starting social with their marketplace. And it's not decentralized yet, but they're going that route, they said anyway. Any predictions? Just last question. Any predictions on who you think will tokenize first? Is it Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube?
I mean, Twitter is the perfect candidate.
Right.
They have been in crisis for like a decade of not really making enough money, and yet the power of the platform reaches around the world. It's more media kind of power is on Twitter than any other social network in the world. It has the same awareness as Facebook, even though it's like a tenth of the size globally. So it literally is a kind of town square, even though it's privately owned by stockholders today. And I think long term, I would just literally launch a token based on past contributions to the platform and turn it into some type of probably dual token owned Web3 DAO of some sort. Like there's a lot of problems to figure out for that to work on such a scale of a platform like this. But I think there's a lot of people that would commit significant time to making that work.
When that happens, I think the world is a very different place at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big, jump for that to happen, but I think it could.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to talk about Remint DAO because I just love this project. I've got the website up here, so I'm just going to cue you up here, Jason.
Sure.
Tagline: resurrecting NFT collections. Our goal is to give new life to undervalued yet deserving NFT collections through buying, promoting, and general project support. Where did this idea come from? Why start this? What are you planning? What are you hoping for? Tell us about Remint.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just tweeted maybe 2 months ago the general idea of this, and I got so many DMs. I probably got more DMs from this than any other tweet I sent out. People just really connected with the idea. So I launched 100 NFTs. I think we sold 21 of them, launched them just a few weeks ago. And we've had our first meeting last week. I actually was barely on the first meeting because I was flying to London. But we have enough kind of interested, cool people in the group. I mean, there's some really interesting people that have already bought in. Some of them, like there's a couple of whales that have bought in. There's a couple of people that are just highly connected in the space. A lot of DAO folks, a lot of marketers that are interested in this. I think marketers have a connection to this because they love kind of the idea of reinvigorating a brand. But there's just so much noise out there in the NFT space. There's collections launching every day, multiple collections a day, and there's just too much noise for every great project to get the spotlight that they deserve. So our group is passionate NFT collectors that want to find under performing NFT collections that we can revive, and that will be through purchasing, mostly individual purchasing. The DAO wallet itself will buy a few for each one, and also we want to do marketing support, do Twitter Spaces, change their PFPs. We're gonna publish a thesis for every collection that we target, and we're probably going to target a collection pretty soon, like before we even sell the first 100 NFTs. But it's a small test. We've had a lot of fun with the discussion so far, talking about which collections we're going to target, and it's just a cool little fun native project that I've enjoyed. Kind of the organic nature of it so far. It's been really fun to work on.
I love it. I think it's fascinating. And so, what makes you think that there are projects that are under minted out there? Like I think the natural thing to say would be, well, it was under minted because it wasn't that good, or it didn't have, something was missing.
I think yeah. I mean, I think what's missing is a lot of people launch an NFT collection and then they don't have the kind of marketing perspective or the time to spend to get out there and promote it the way that it deserves.
Yeah.
I know I've bought into several kind of underperforming collections, and I think one of the reasons people are so excited about this, the people that are joining, and people get really excited about it, is because everyone relates to the storyline of, I've bought into an NFT collection that did underperform, and I feel like it has a lot of potential. And then all of us kind of comparing notes on why we all think that. Do we think about the same collections? Do we have different assumptions from each other? And spoiler alert, we do all have different assumptions. And there is a question. The question is can you revive an old collection? I think there's some examples out there of that happening, especially kind of historic collections. But I mean, this is an experiment. We may get into this and learn that it is very, very hard to relaunch a collection. I'm under the opinion that we can learn pretty quick, probably over the course of 6 months to a year, what it would take to revive a collection. And I think there's some fundamental things that would do that, because essentially every NFT collection that does really well, it's just momentum, FOMO, like getting into the zeitgeist and that attention spotlight. And I think the resources of this group already are significant in those directions. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we choose first.
Well, it's about creating a narrative as well, right? Like CryptoPunks, I wouldn't say that they were revived because they started off free, I guess, to mint, but they didn't go anywhere for a really long time. And all of a sudden there was a narrative like, oh, this was the first one, and boom, like now everyone knows CryptoPunk, right? So it's definitely possible if you can find the right, and that's really marketing, right? It comes down to finding that narrative and getting people excited about it, right?
Yeah. And there's just so much great art. I mean, as an artist, there's just so much great art out there that, in my opinion, could do a lot better and could be introduced to people at a much larger scale than it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree. Okay. We like to wrap up with a little bit of a speed round, Jason. So just do some rapid fire questions at you. You ready to go? Let's get it.
I am. Let's do it.
Okay. So let's start off with favorite person to follow on Twitter. We just talked about Twitter.
Ooh, favorite single person to follow on Twitter.
Or company, I guess.
Yeah, could be.
Twitter account in general.
The state of New Jersey is a pretty good account to follow.
Okay.
They're very kind of, Stakem used to be my number one, but the person that wrote the tweets for Stakem, Nathan Albach, is no longer writing his tweets. So I will say the state of New Jersey. I think they do a really good job trolling other states.
I was gonna say, what is the state of New Jersey? I've never
Like
you just
make
won the
fun of
podcast with that answer.
they make fun of like Delaware a lot. They did like an emoji map of the state once and like talk about bagels and pizza in New Jersey and the shore. And I don't know, it's just very true to the state, and they've done a pretty good job.
Obviously following them right now as we speak. That sounds amazing.
So basically the state of New Jersey is just a troll account on other states.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic. Okay. Other than your own projects, another project could be an NFT, could be a DAO, could be a protocol, any other Web3 project that has sort of caught your attention recently that you're excited about?
I will give a shout out to Crypto Mauries. I'm not an owner, but I'm thinking about getting one. It's kind of like skull art collection. They are embarking on a utility for their members where they're giving to, connect to our Social Fresh DAO project. They're giving free teletherapy to any of their holders. And they've partnered with a vendor that does this for like corporations that want to provide therapy and other kind of health resources for their employees. So I'm watching that a little closely and really curious to see how that pans out for them and kind of the economics of that benefit that they're offering. I think that they seem to be a pretty positive community, and I've heard good vibes from people that are holders of that.
That's awesome. We'll definitely include links to all these in the show notes as well. Favorite or funniest token name?
Favorite or funniest token name? There was a GM token, and there's been several, but there was one that caught like a little bit of a high for maybe like a couple weeks last year. And I loved the idea of there being a GM token, and there was no utility to it whatsoever. So I thought that was cool.
It sounds like we were in the middle of a bull run if that's happening. Random token.
Well, I just liked being able to write like $GM.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was funny.
I love it. Awesome. Want to give you a chance to tell our listeners where they can find you. I know you've got the Social Fresh conference coming up in just less than a month. We'll include obviously all the links to you in the show notes, but where can people find you if they want to reach out? How can they join your various projects?
Yeah, Twitter is the best place to find me at Jason Keath, Keath. RemitDAO.com for Remit DAO. If you're looking at that, you can buy the tokens. You can buy the NFT now, the member NFT, and join the Discord. And then Social Fresh is June 21st to 23rd in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you can go to socialfresh.com/2022 to check that out. If that's really for people that are professionals in social community, or if you're running a startup and you are doing your own social community right now, it's where you get kind of the best of what's working in social media for businesses today.
Awesome. Kai,
Jason, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say thank you. This is a great conversation. It was really nice to have someone on that you can tell you're super passionate about this. You probably think about this all the time, as I do, and Jay does as well. So it's nice to speak to someone who's that deep into it. So thanks for joining, and great conversation.
Yeah, thanks. Great to meet you guys.
Have a good one. Thanks so much, listeners, and we'll see you next time on the show.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. By the way, if you have yet to join the Discord community, you are missing out. This is where all the magic happens. This is where we learn, where we ask questions, where we network. You want to be in there. The link to join is in the description below. And finally, a quick disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.